Every year, 180 million tons of tomatoes move across continents, enough to stack halfway to the moon if piled on top of each other. But these fragile fruits bruise at the lightest touch, ripen unpredictably, and face strict import regulations. One delay, one wrong temperature setting, and an entire shipment is lost. Yet somehow they reach store shelves, fresh and flawless. How? The answer lies in a global system of AI-driven sorting, precision refrigeration, and cutting-edge logistics that keeps the world's tomatoes moving. From the moment a tomato is picked, the clock starts ticking. Spoilage sets in fast, and without the right balance of agriculture, technology, and logistics, it never reaches the plate. Across the world, farmers and engineers are in a constant battle against time, using AI-driven harvesters, real-time tracking, and controlled atmosphere storage to ensure these delicate fruits survive the trip. In California's Central Valley, industrial farms rely on mechanical harvesters that tear through fields, collecting 60,000 pounds of tomatoes per hour. These machines are perfect for processing tomatoes, the kind used in sauces and pastes, but they're too rough for fresh market varieties. That's why in Italy's Campania region, farmers still pick San Marzano tomatoes by hand, carefully selecting each one to avoid bruising. It's slow, but for delicate, high-value tomatoes, there's no other way. Once harvested, tomatoes head straight to sorting facilities where AI-driven cameras and hyperspectral imaging scan for ripeness, defects, and size. Some are marked for immediate sale, while others, picked firmer, are prepped for long-haul transport. This tech prevents waste and makes sure only the best tomatoes move forward, but picking and sorting are just the start. Without the right packaging, even a perfect tomato can go bad before reaching its destination. That's where modified atmosphere packaging, MAP, helps, adjusting oxygen and carbon dioxide levels to slow ripening. Some shipments use ethylene absorbers to trap the gas that makes tomatoes soften too quickly. Even with advanced technology, tomatoes remain one of the most fragile crops in global trade. Unlike grains or potatoes, they spoil quickly, bruise easily, and demand precise temperature control at every stage. One bump in the road, one broken cooling unit, and entire shipments become worthless. That's why cold chain logistics, climate-controlled storage, and real-time tracking aren't just helpful, they're essential. And even then, disasters happen. What happens when a shipment gets stuck at customs? Or when a truck's cooling system fails? If the timing or conditions aren't perfect, an entire load can turn to mush before it even reaches the store. For short distances, refrigerated trucks keep tomatoes moving at 50-55 degrees Celsius, 10 to 13 degrees, cool enough to slow ripening but not cold enough to cause chilling injuries, which make them mealy and tasteless. Every detail matters, from humidity control to airflow design, because even a few degrees off can ruin an entire shipment. But things get trickier when tomatoes need to cross borders or oceans. For international trade, most travel by reefer, refrigerated shipping containers, packed into temperature-controlled stacks aboard massive cargo ships. Some shipments use modified atmosphere containers that adjust oxygen and CO2 levels to extend freshness. If a delay happens, like a customs hold or port congestion, the entire load can spoil, racking up millions in losses. Air freight offers a faster solution, but it's expensive and only used for high-value, perishable varieties like heirloom tomatoes. Even then, a sudden pressure drop or temperature shift mid-flight can cause skin splitting or early spoilage, and then there are unexpected risks: truck breakdowns, power failures in cold storage, or even extreme weather disrupting supply routes. To stay ahead, companies now use IoT sensors and real-time tracking to monitor temperature, humidity, and shipment location, triggering alerts if conditions start to slip. Even with all this tech, transport remains a race against time. Every step has to be perfectly coordinated, or the tomatoes won't make it. It's about efficiency, sustainability, and reducing waste. Tomatoes may seem like a simple product, but getting them from farms to consumers is anything but easy. Every step of the process is full of challenges that go beyond just keeping them fresh. Government regulations, unpredictable weather, port congestion, rising fuel costs, and consumer expectations all play a role in shaping how tomatoes are transported, sold, and priced. Even with advanced technology, AI-driven logistics, and cold chain management, the industry still faces hurdles that can disrupt supply chains and cause massive losses. Regulations are a minefield in global tomato transport. Each country enforces its own maze of rules on pesticide residue, packaging, and size requirements. A tomato that's perfectly legal in one country can be banned in another. In the European Union, strict pesticide limits mean that if even one sample exceeds the threshold, entire shipments can be blocked or destroyed, costing exporters millions. The United States has its own import restrictions, requiring phytosanitary certificates to prove that tomatoes are free from pests and diseases. These regulations are meant to protect consumers and local agriculture, but they create logistical headaches for exporters. If a shipment arrives at a port and doesn't meet the importing country's standards, it can be held up for weeks, leading to spoilage, financial losses, and supply shortages. Then there's the issue of packaging and size regulations. Some markets, like Japan, only accept perfectly uniform tomatoes, rejecting anything that doesn't meet strict color, size, and shape requirements. In contrast, countries like India and Brazil are more flexible, allowing for more variety in tomato appearance. These differences force exporters to sort and separate shipments based on destination, adding extra costs and logistical complexity. Packaging rules also vary widely. Some countries require biodegradable or recyclable materials, while others still allow traditional plastic crates. The growing push for sustainable packaging has added another layer of complexity, as companies now have to comply with different environmental laws across multiple markets. Even if a shipment meets all regulatory requirements, nature itself remains a major challenge. Weather disruptions, heat waves, droughts, hurricanes, and heavy rains can devastate tomato crops and disrupt transport routes. In 2022, a severe drought in California's Central Valley caused a drop in tomato yields, driving up prices worldwide. In Spain, record-high temperatures have forced farmers to harvest earlier than usual, affecting the flavor and quality of exported tomatoes. And in Mexico, heavy rains can flood fields and delay harvests, pushing back delivery schedules and leaving retailers with supply gaps. Extreme weather doesn't just affect production, it also disrupts transportation. When hurricanes hit the Gulf of Mexico, for example, shipping ports shut down, delaying cargo ships for weeks. In winter, snowstorms in northern Europe or the US Midwest can block roads, preventing trucks from reaching their destinations on time. And heat waves in the Middle East or Africa can overload refrigeration systems, causing spoilage before tomatoes even reach the market. These climate-related disruptions have forced logistics companies to invest in weather prediction software, allowing them to anticipate potential delays and reroute shipments when needed. Beyond regulations and climate issues, economic pressures like fuel costs and inflation make tomato transport more expensive than ever. Fuel is one of the biggest costs in logistics, and when oil prices spike, transportation costs rise with them. This affects everything from farm equipment and refrigerated trucks to cargo ships and air freight. When fuel prices soared in 2022, the cost of shipping a container of tomatoes from Mexico to the US increased by nearly 20%, forcing some suppliers to raise prices or limit exports. Inflation also affects the cost of fertilizers, labor, and packaging, making it harder for farmers to maintain profit margins without passing costs on to consumers. While many of these obstacles are out of human control, one of the biggest challenges in tomato transport comes from consumers themselves. People expect tomatoes to be bright red, perfectly round, and free from blemishes, but nature doesn't work that way. In reality, tomatoes come in all shapes and sizes, and minor imperfections don't affect taste or quality. However, because supermarkets only want perfect-looking tomatoes, millions of pounds of perfectly edible produce are discarded every year. In the US alone, it's estimated that 30–40% of harvested tomatoes never make it to market simply because they don't meet cosmetic standards. This obsession with appearance leads to huge amounts of food waste, unnecessary costs, and environmental harm. To fight this, some companies are pushing for more acceptance of imperfect tomatoes, the ones that are slightly misshapen but still completely edible. In some European countries, retailers have started selling ugly produce at a discount, encouraging consumers to buy tomatoes that might not look perfect but are just as good for cooking and eating. AI-driven sorting systems are also being used to find new markets for lower-grade tomatoes. Instead of being wasted, they can be redirected to food processing plants for sauces, pastes, and canned goods. Even with all these challenges, strict regulations, unpredictable weather, rising costs, and unrealistic consumer expectations, tomatoes remain one of the most widely transported foods in the world. The industry continues to adapt using technology, sustainability efforts, and smarter logistics to overcome these barriers. But the question remains, how can we make the global tomato supply chain more efficient, less wasteful, and more resilient to future disruptions? With new advancements in AI, blockchain tracking, vertical farming, and sustainable packaging, the future of tomato transport is evolving rapidly. The focus is shifting toward reducing food waste, cutting emissions, and making global supply chains more reliable. But no matter how much the system improves, one thing is certain: tomatoes will always be in demand, and the challenges of transporting them will keep pushing the industry to innovate. Every step from farm to shelf is being rethought with AI, blockchain, automation, and green energy. The industry is no longer just relying on refrigeration and good timing. Now it's all about data, real-time tracking, and smarter distribution. One of the biggest game changers is blockchain tracking. In the past, a shipment of tomatoes could pass through half a dozen checkpoints, farms, warehouses, ports, distributors, without anyone knowing exactly what was happening along the way. If a cooling unit failed or a delay happened at customs, that information wasn't immediately visible, and by the time someone caught it, the damage was done. Now, with real-time blockchain records, every single movement of a shipment is logged, tracked, and accessible to everyone in the supply chain. Sensors in the crates detect temperature, humidity, and handling conditions, and alert distributors the moment something goes wrong. A truck's cooling system fails, the distributor knows immediately and reroutes the cargo to a backup cold storage facility before spoilage happens. A customs delay puts a shipment at risk, the system flags the issue, and logistics teams adjust to prevent unnecessary waste. It's a level of precision that didn't exist before, and it's already saving millions of dollars in lost produce every year. And it's not just tracking that's improving, AI is making logistics faster and smarter. Right now, many tomato shipments follow pre-planned routes, but AI-powered transport systems are learning how to adjust in real time. Instead of sticking to a rigid plan, algorithms consider weather changes, fuel efficiency, port congestion, and customs activity to optimize routes on the fly. A heat wave is expected to hit a shipping route. The system suggests a cooler path to avoid spoilage. A port is backed up. The shipment is rerouted to another hub before it even arrives. This kind of predictive intelligence prevents losses, saves fuel, and gets tomatoes to market fresher than ever. Even with better tracking and route optimization, the biggest challenge in tomato transport is keeping them fresh without burning through massive amounts of energy. Refrigerated transport is necessary, but traditional cooling systems are energy-intensive and contribute to emissions. That's why companies are switching to solar-powered refrigeration units that run off renewable energy instead of diesel generators. Some containers even use phase change materials that store and release cold energy like a battery, keeping the temperature stable without needing constant power. It's a huge shift in sustainability, especially as food transport accounts for a major share of global carbon emissions. Another big step forward is biodegradable, bio-based packaging. Right now, plastic crates and wraps are the norm, but they contribute to waste and pollution. Some companies are turning to plant-based bioplastics that decompose naturally while still keeping tomatoes fresh. Others are testing cellulose-based packaging that regulates moisture, preventing condensation and mold. Even something as simple as breathable coatings that slow moisture loss can make a big difference in extending shelf life without refrigeration. But the biggest shift in tomato transport might not be in how we move them, it could be in where we grow them. Right now, many tomatoes travel thousands of miles before they reach consumers, but vertical farms and hydroponic systems are changing that. Instead of relying on seasonal production in faraway countries, supermarkets are starting to source tomatoes from indoor farms just miles away from urban centers. These farms use AI-controlled environments, LED lighting, and precision irrigation to produce consistent, high-quality tomatoes year-round. They don't need soil, they use far less water, and they eliminate the need for long-haul transport. That means fewer emissions, less waste, and fresher tomatoes at the store. Some of the biggest retailers are already investing in this model. Supermarkets like Walmart and Carrefour are experimenting with local hydroponic farms that supply tomatoes directly to their stores. These tomatoes don't need to be picked early and ripened with ethylene gas. They can stay on the vine longer and develop better flavor before being harvested. The result? Less transport, lower costs, and a better tasting product. It's a shift that could reshape the entire tomato industry in the next decade. But even as local farming grows, global tomato transport isn't going anywhere. The demand is just too high, and there will always be a need to move tomatoes across long distances. That's why the industry is also looking at electric-powered cargo ships, hydrogen-fueled trucks, and even drone delivery systems for short-range distribution. There's also research into edible coatings that keep tomatoes fresh longer without plastic packaging. Innovations like these will continue pushing the limits of what's possible, making tomato transport faster, greener, and more efficient. The way tomatoes move around the world has always been about finding the right balance between speed, quality, and cost. Now, with blockchain tracking, AI-powered logistics, green refrigeration, and vertical farming, that balance is shifting towards something even better, a system that's smarter, more sustainable, and built for the future. And whether they come from a farm across the world or a greenhouse down the street, one thing is certain: tomatoes will keep moving, and the technology behind their transport will only get better. Every tomato on a shelf has passed through a network of farmers, machines, sensors, and transport systems designed to keep it fresh. Regulations, climate shifts, and market pressures make this process complex, but AI, blockchain, and sustainable logistics are shaping a smarter future. Next time you grab a tomato, think about what it took to get there: the technology, the risks, and the billions of miles traveled. This isn't just food, it's a global operation that relies on innovation and precision. If this gave you a new perspective, hit like and check out the next video on your screen to see how technology is reshaping global food transport.